Thanks so very, very much to John, and we wish John all the very best for his big event tonight. I've got a great pleasure now to introduce Oraib Toukan. Oraib is interested in situations, participatory interventions, and mimicry as a method. She works across media, incorporating photography, video, and text in her practice. Born in Boston and raised in Amman, Jordan, Toukan has a master's in fine art from Bard College, as well as a master's in information systems and environmental geography. She is a founding member of the Triangle Arts Annual International Artist Collaboration in Shatana, Jordan, and also an active member of Makan, Jordan's advisory group. Her many recent exhibitions include the 11th Istanbul Biennial in 2009, NGBK in Berlin, the Irish Museum of Contemporary Art in 2010, INIVA in London in 2010, and also the Liverpool Biennial City States in 2010. She is currently living and working in New York City. For the Map Marathon today, Oraib will present Talking Heads and or Other Matters. A very warm welcome to Oraib Toukan.
Hi Hussein. Check out the foreword. I thought you would specifically like it. A proposal of another retired lieutenant. A Phoenicia reborn, an Arab Shia state, an Islamic sacred state, but even a free Kurdistan. I'm in the process of writing to Christie's. They just opened a Middle East office in Dubai. Want to help me sell a new Middle East? XXO.
Welcome to Disneyland, USA. This was all a Disney dream a dozen years ago, a far-out project that was totally unproved. Today, 60 million people have come here from every state in America and from almost every nation around the world. In Town Square on Main Street, many have paused to read the dedication plaque that symbolizes the warm and friendly spirit of Walt Disney's Magic Kingdom. To all who come to this happy place, welcome. Disneyland is your land.
Email dated July 14th, 2007, reselling nation states. Oraib, I will be presenting the below to you in full on July 29th as promised in a formal presentation. But I wanted you to see this beforehand so that you artists have time to digest the real world. Attached you will find my calculations for auctioning off the Middle East as discussed. They are based on the assumptions we agreed on in our last meeting. 1, we are selling the Middle East leasehold. 2, I will take off a % for political business risk based on hunch. The lease value will be your base auction price. You will take these to the auction house, to your business advisors and your marketing consultants. You will get variably more or less because every investor buyer has a different view of the risk. Hussein. Email, May 28, 2009. Interview with you. Dear Frank, I'm writing to you in your capacity as an international relations mediator. I'm an artist working on auctioning off the Middle East. With the aid of world-class advisors in banking, communication, and diplomacy, I am now looking to create Nehru's Holdings to eventualize this auction. Should you be interested in partaking in this project, in however brief a manner, I would very much like to enlist your expertise to further this endeavor. Do please let me know your thoughts so that we might possibly schedule our first meeting. Please be aware that this meeting and all our correspondences will be documented. Warm regards, Oraib Toukan. Frank, back to me. Interested? Find a time with my assistant. I'm on book tour. Sent via BlackBerry from T-Mobile. End of 2008, the economic crisis begins. I turn to these global experts as advised, and the consultation on how to auction off territory begins.
So I think if the question is whether or not we should brand the region as a whole as a one-item sale, or whether we should do it in single pieces, as individual opportunities, I think it's a question that we should really consider closely. Number one is, who do we have as a buyer, and would somebody be willing to come in as a single buyer, or whether it would be important to kind of build a partnership or a corporation that would come in and purchase segmented pieces of the land. My instinct from a PR perspective, just so that we get more bang for our buck, as they say, is to be able to identify specific regions. And we may want to reassess what those borders are exactly ourselves based on where we think the selling points are, and kind of take some of the more unpopular areas like Ahwaz in Iran and mix them together with Karbala in Iraq and just give it as one package based on what we think the sale would be. And that's up to us, as we work with the auctioneers and as we work with the various, individuals, is to really assess, are the current existing borders, as I said, are those valid selling points, or should we have a reassessment of that whole area and be able to sell off what we think would have the most monetary value and be able to bring in the highest price?
In some cases, a single buyer may not be sufficient. They may have to get consortiums together, try and buy a country in its entirety. So I think drawing out a marketing process where you slowly build up the anticipation, slowly bring out the details of what's going to be available, would, I think, help to generate that sense of buzz and excitement, and in fact probably generate so much demand it become very difficult to cope with it. So you'd have to be very selective about who's allowed to come into that auction.
I think the division of an ethnic state and being able to sell a Shiite region versus a Sunni region, or perhaps even a Kurdish region, is something that we should look at again much more closely, as I think the individual selling points are very eager, and we could appeal to different parts of the diaspora to be able to reclaim part of their heritage and their religious identity.
There isn't, of course, an established process to do this in the UN or anywhere else. But nothing is impossible in diplomacy or indeed negotiation, and if the price is right, usually you can find a seller.
So for example, if you take Iraq, which has got one of the largest oil reserves known to man, as a fantastic, exciting prospect for any potential bidder. Now, the economic and social instability there at the moment might lead a buyer to become wary. But you could have an example where Iraq is sold off at auction, and you could split off each of the provinces into those which are relatively safe and stable, into those which are relatively less safe and have fewer resources.
Iran's a bit of a different story because we have a real image problem, I think, with Iran. We need to be really clear that the people of Iran, in terms of what's been visually presented over the past few years, has been very problematic. This idea of the chador and the darkness needs to be really lifted so that we can identify a lot of the lighter parts of the Iranian culture. I think we'll have a harder time finding somebody who's willing to make that sale, because the investment is not only in the purchase of the land, but we're going to actually really, I think, have to reassess the national dress.
In terms of the pure economic resources available in Iran, I think that would be justification enough for America to say, look, this is a sweet spot in the Middle East, we'd like a bit of that, and it would be in their strategic interest to hold it. And I think China would leap at the opportunity to acquire some strategic interests through which it can secure its supply of resources in order to finance its growth, given the size of its population and its desire to be on a par with the Western world. But then again, it goes back to my original point about you probably need to vet your sellers and your buyers very thoroughly, because there's going to be a lot of people who wouldn't mind having a punt, say, at Jordan or Israel, but they might not have the wherewithal to do it. So it's important to choose the buyers very carefully.
Yeah, I mean, the most important thing with the auction process is to make sure that we preserve the value of the thing that's being auctioned. So if we want to auction off a country, what we don't want to do is to destroy the value that is in that country. And that's why I think it's essential that we clearly define how the entity or the sovereign is being auctioned and who makes that decision. So in other words, if a country is going to be auctioned, you want to make sure that there is consensus amongst the population that they would like their country to be auctioned. And then for them to buy into that, they have to get the benefits of that auction. So any monetary benefit that accrues from the auction, the vast majority of that has to go to the country and therefore the people involved.
But there's got to be some mechanism of consultation with the people whose land it actually is, hasn't there? I mean, whether it's a democratic or undemocratic government, I mean, it wouldn't be reasonable of you, as the person proposing to sell this land, to not consult them. That, you know, you could not consult them if you chose not to. But A, you would be being unreasonable and perhaps unlawful as well, but B, you'd probably be inspiring conflict down the line, because if you sold somebody's territory without securing their agreement first, it's quite likely that they wouldn't cooperate with the sale. They wouldn't perhaps cooperate with the new owners. So you might be storing up political trouble for the future.
I think the legal implications will primarily have to do with insurance, because it's not enough just to buy this area. We have to sort of send some Westerners over there to train the people and to sort of supervise them, and that could get a little bit messy. Insurance could cost a lot for some of these firms. So we're going to have to draw up pretty good legal paperwork about how much we're willing to expend. If I say that we start the bidding at $100 billion, I think get ready for the fact that a quarter of that will go towards insurance.
Oraib, I think that you will initially, by many people, be given a very poor PR reputation, as you so eloquently put it. I think that would be one of the reasons we would encourage you to hire a PR firm.
So, research, analyze your assets, plan your campaign. Planning your campaign means developing messages that join what you have to offer with what they want to know or hear. It's about filling that gap. That's where your campaign goes, at a strategic level. And that means having messages, having materials, and having a convincing and self-confident brand proposition, whether it's country or Middle East overall. So that's the strategic piece, just 5 things. The next piece is implementing, making it happen. So on a tactical level, yes, I think you can use some of the big, bold, conceptual ideas that are used in luxury marketing and luxury advertising. So that will be one part. I think you need to do public relations program which reaches out to key opinion formers and makes them endorsers, whether they're celebrities, whether they're academics, whether they're politicians, whether they're historians, anthropologists, civic leaders, religious leaders. You need to convince those people who can then convince others. They act as multipliers, and that's one of the secrets of public relations.
But also to align yourself with some of the more popular people. I know you have a very close relationship to Lebanon, so perhaps an alliance with Nancy and some of the other hip-hop and pop stars from the region who have such a great influence would be very important. I think within Iran, within some of the more popular filmmakers, Kiarostami and Bahman Qobadi and people of that ilk.
Use social media. Create communities and constituencies of mutual interest. I'm a citizen of a country being sold, you're a citizen of a country that might buy me. I want you to know what my country is like. I want to know what your country is like, because you might be my new ruler.
To that end, I would also encourage you to do some philanthropic give-backs, if you will, that would improve your image. So to identify some of the hotbeds of negativity that would be coming from you, and whether that would be from Amman or Cairo or perhaps even Yemen, to then be able to do some philanthropic things that would really showcase how important it is. Perhaps you could partner with the French government to build a hospital or an art center or something like that. And I think that it would be very important for you to examine that and to look at your own identity, Jordanian and Palestinian, and be able to look at those regions and what you could give back to the people in that community, so as to look at your natural partners and natural alliances that you can form and to be able to protect yourself that way.
I think you need to think of this in the social entrepreneurship model, where it looks as though what you're doing is investing in the countries themselves, but of course for a profit. And so there, again, you have to think about it. If you're starting with a bid of 100 billion, and let's say 25 billion is going to go towards insurance, you should probably plan on another 10 billion for infrastructure building. In other words, if you think of the Middle East as a fixer-upper, you got to figure out, well, how much is it going to take me to actually, rebuild the foundation of this? You got to build some roads, you're going to have to build some schools, things like that. That's going to cost. That's going to cost some money.
In effect, you could end up with a situation where you've exchanged the Middle East for 30-40% of the Western world. You see, because there has to be an exchange of assets. Dollars, the dollar amount is just a medium of exchange, just a way of counting the numbers and who has what.
Well, I would have thought the key points are, establish who's got title to the land, who's got the sovereign rights to it, whether there's any private ownership of that land, of the territory, and then establish whether you have their consent to the sale. And once you have those things, then you're good to go.
So as you saw, the media strategist advised that I turn to a PR advisor, who in turn advised me that I commission a brander to brand the initiative. The brander advised that I commission an advertising company to market what at that stage was created, conceived, and established as Nairouz Holdings. The name of the initiative itself turned into a pastiche. The branders suggested Nairouz as a name because it was the only name that somehow coincided between Afghanistan to Egypt, and it also referenced an attempted auction of a cosmic rock. The cosmic rock was found in 2006 by an elderly man in rural Jordan who tried to auction off a meteorite rock. The meteorite rock was found in his garden. But the Royal Geographic Society and the government itself demanded immediate handover because it's property of the universe and not property of the tenant. So at that stage, a legal battle came about as to who owns the meteorite rock. Nairouz also, of course, means New Year, Nowruz in Iran. So it marked a new year and a new beginning for a new map. Strangely, actually, we found out later, after the branders came up with this, that it's also the Christian Coptic New Year, which coincidentally fell on September 11th. By 2010, so this is the rock. By 2010, the rock made it to Christie's front cover. However, the catalog was made by me, and enclosed was a letter to Christie's explaining that I am an artist looking to auction off the Middle East. The catalog appropriated the exact look and feel of Christie's own templates after they had recently opened in Dubai, but appropriated their information with CIA World Factbook information on the Middle East. Replacing Middle Eastern art with satellite images, their starting bid with the starting bid of paintings with economists is the estimated value of each of these nation states and provenance with colonial ownership. So for example, Oman, lot 315, area comparative slightly smaller than Kansas, political parties and leaders none. Provenance, tribal families, 3 successive Persian dynasties, the whole of Oman is up for auction for 1.215 billion. In Afghanistan, for example, on the contrary, had around 4 pages of political parties, endless political parties, one after the other. And of course was valued at a much lower rate given its current discount rate. At some point, the branders and the advertisers came back to me with the logo. The idea of the logo was that it should mimic Dubai's World project, where maps of islands are formed and islands of maps are formed from one part of the Earth's seabed, using material from one part of the Earth's seabed to the other. The logo was supposed to also look cosmological, and it appropriated real estate typography that was going on in the region at the time. I'm going to jump to 2 final remarks. Monday, December 28, 2009, I received an email in my inbox saying, seeking permission to use your logo. Dear Madame Toukan, I'm writing to you from Munich, Germany, and would kindly ask your permission to use part of your work for a private purpose. We are a small group of well-traveled people with a special preference for Arabia and the Sahara. Presently, we are building our 3rd expedition camper. Having done most of the work, we are now looking for an eye-catching decoration for the vehicle. When we stumbled across an article about your work in our local paper, we thought it would be the ultimate logo for our truck. Thus, we would like to apply the logo and sentence to our camper and kindly ask you for your permission to do so. And they sent me an attachment and plans of their future truck of the Sahara. By July 2010, and just to close it here, the Huffington Post likewise picked up on the advertisements. Dubai on the auction block? Here's the premise. An entire region is up for auction. Quote unquote, mark your calendars for an opportunity of a lifetime, reads the ad copy. In a bold step towards the future of real estate, I can't read now. Mark your calendars for the opportunity of a lifetime. In a bold step towards the future of real estate, Nairouz invites you to bid for the ultimate luxury, the Middle East. In a historic one-off time, these balconies may be yours to own for 100 years. Own it, the Middle East auction. Thank you.